All right, welcome to room 261. My name is Darrin DeNeve. I will be your practical math instructor here on video today. Um, as discussed in class, this is the first day of the 9 weeks of practical math, really, where we're doing some mathematics, and I just happen to be gone, which is unusual. But we have a little video here to help get you started. You've got a handout given to you by the sub, and you should have some questions, and for that matter, an answer sheet. And so we're going to go through that a little bit. But before we do, it's August 20th. It's how about a little math trivia? August 20th is 8/20. Did you know that 8/20 is 9 cubed plus 9 squared plus 9 to the first plus 9 to the 0? That's pretty mathematically exciting, I'm sure, for you. Ready? It's 9 cubed plus 9 squared plus 9. That's to the first, 9 to the first, plus 1. Look at that. It's 8/20. How exciting. So that means that if we were in a base 9 number system instead of a base 10, then 8/20, which is base 10, is actually this number, 1111, in base 9. But you don't need to know that. That's just sort of math trivia for you if you wanted it. All right. So, as you can see, the first topic of practical math is on shopping. As you might recall us talking about in class, each day there's sort of a theme, and today is shopping. And so we're going to ask some questions and answer them, and then, as you know, we'll also have some arithmetic practice questions as we go along here. So it says, suppose you go to a department store and purchase 5 shirts at $12.95 each, 3 pairs of pants at $17.50 each, 2 pairs of shoes, one for $34 and one for $48, and a belt for $11.25. The first question is pretty easy. It's how many items did you buy? And so, that's 5 shirts, 3 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of shoes, and a belt. And so that's 11 items. Okay? Practical math is such that it starts easy and gets a little more difficult sometimes. How much did you spend on shirts? Well, the shirts were $12.95 each. There are 5 of them, and so we are simply going to multiply 5 times $12.95. We could type that in on our calculator. That's cool. But let's try to do it in our head, 5 times 13 is 65. Because, 5 times 10 is 50, and 5 times 3 is 15. And 50 and 15 makes 65. Anyway, 5 times 13 is 65. So $12.95 is just a nickel away from 13. And so a nickel times 5 is a quarter. And so it'll be a quarter less than $65. So $64.75. No one says you have to do that in your head, right? But 5 times $12.95 is in fact $64.75. How much did you spend on pants? Well, there's 3 pairs of pants at $17.50 each. Okay, that's going to be $52.50. 17 times 3 is 51. And 3 times 50 cents is $1.50. 51 and $1.50 is $52.50. Again, you can just use your calculator. No one's taking your calculator away in practical math. And so, there you go. How much did you spend total? Well, we're going to add up the shirts, which was $64.75, and the pants, which is $52.50. And the shoes, one for $34, one for $48, and a belt. So we're going to add up all of those things. When we do that, we get $210.50. Okay. Question 5 says the sales tax is 8.25%. How much will you pay? Different people do this different ways. Remember that 8.25% means 8.25 out of 100. Okay? And so some people like to do it this way: 8.25 divided by 100 and then multiplied by the amount. That's a very reasonable thought. Some people like to simply change that percent to a decimal first. And so 8.25 changed to a decimal, right, is 0.0825. And so some people take 0.0825 times the 21050. All right, so either way, let's just pump our calculator out here a little bit. Either way, you're going to see whether you take 8.25 and divide by 100 and then multiply by 21050, you'll see that that's the same as if you would have just taken 0.0825 times 21050. And so that answer you can see is 17.36625. This is money, and so we will round to the nearest penny, and so that'll be $17.37. All right, $17.37. The next question says, how much will you spend total then? Well, that's the 21050 plus the tax, so plus the 1737. When we take 21050 plus 1736, we get 227.86. Question 7 says, suppose the store is having a sale where you receive 25% off. What is your new total? Well, there's really at least two different ways to go about this. Some people like to think, all right, let's calculate the discount. And so we'll take 25% of 227.86. All right, and so that's 0.25 times 227.86. That's also true that, 0.25 is 1/4. You could divide by 4, but we'll just write it out this way on paper. And so we could take 0.25 times 227.86, and we get $56.97. And then we're going to subtract that. Remember, this was the discount. So we're going to subtract that from 227.86. And that's $170.89. All right, that's a very reasonable way to go about this problem. And then the other way that some people do is they say, well, geez, if we're getting a 25% discount, that must mean that we're paying 75%. So that's a little bit more clever thought, but it's also a very quicker thought. So you just have to calculate 227.86 times 0.75. And you're going to see that you're going to get the same answer. And it might differ by a penny here because of the rounding we did as we went. But in practical math, we're not really trying to land a man on the moon here. We're just trying to kind of get answers that are really pretty close. And so let's see what happens here when we type this in. So 0.75 times 227.86. And you see that we get 170.895. All right. And so 170.895. Again, when you round that, that'd be 170.9. You might remember that we rounded over here first. So this is really the same answer. We're off by a penny. Okay. That was the first 7 questions. On question 8, this one's a little more complicated. Question 8 says, suppose that instead of paying for these items up front, you choose to use a credit card, and then you choose to do this with a few other things as well. We're actually going to have a whole lesson on credit cards. This is sort of a preview. The bill came at the end of the month, and your credit card was $500. You spend a minimum payment of $10, and then you spend another $110 in the next month. Now, so you spent $10 out of that $500 to begin with. So $490 is this way. Now, one thing you have to know to understand this question is, like, how do the good people at Visa or MasterCard or Discover make money? Well, they make money by basically lending you money before you pay for stuff. And when somebody lends you money, they charge you interest, which is where this annual percentage rate of 19.5% comes into play. So we're going to have to pay interest on the 490 that we didn't pay, all right, in the amount 490 times 0.195 divided by 12. Well, let me explain that. 0.195 is this number, but move the decimal point over twice, sort of like we did earlier. Divided by 12, because you get your bill every month. There's 12 months in a year, and you might notice that this is an annual percentage rate. So this is how we're getting to where we're calculating our monthly finance charge. And so we're going to take 490 times 0.195 divided by 12, and that's $7.96. Okay, so we didn't pay $4.90. They're charging us $7.96 in interest, or called a finance charge. Plus, it says we kept spending money of $110. And so let's take all those numbers and add them up. We got $4.90, $7.96, plus $110. That all adds up to $607.96. So that'll be our bill at the end of the month. Now, if that was a little fast for you, that's the beauty of video, right? You can pause a video, you can watch it again, you can watch it more slowly, you can watch it as many times as you need to. So there's a lot of steps to that problem. So when you get to the other one on your homework, you might want to come back to this video and kind of listen to it a little more carefully. Okay, let's jump to number 24. It says, what's the average of these numbers? You might recall that to find the average of numbers, you add them up and you divide by how many you have. And so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these numbers. So when we add this up, 11 and 8 make 19, plus 9 is 28, 38, 53, 62, 67, 72, 92, 109. So this is 109 divided by 10, which is going to be 10.9. I sort of wonder if maybe we ought to do that all on our calculator here, just to make sure we got the right answer. So we have 11 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10 plus 15 plus 9 plus 5 plus 5 plus 20 plus 17, and divided by 10 is in fact 10.9. All right, got the right answer. On question 25, it kind of changes things a little bit. It says 5 numbers have an average of 78, and we know 4 of them. What is the 5th number? Okay, so if you like algebra, excuse me, I wrote 76 twice. If you like algebra, you don't mind this equation here. 74 plus 76 plus 81 plus 83 plus some number we don't know divided by 5 equals 78. Okay, so you could, if you like algebra, solve that equation. If you're not so much into algebra, you might think like this. If 5 numbers have an average of 78, that must mean that they all add up to whatever 78 times 5 is. You know, like if you had 5 different 78s, they would have an average of 78. So we'll take 78 times 5, and we're going to get 390. So if all of the numbers have to add up to 390, and the numbers that we know add up to this, so that's 150, 231, 314 maybe. Let's do this on the calculator. 374, 76, 81, 83, 314. Then, so the numbers we know add up to 314, and we know that all 5 add up to 390. And so if we take 390 minus 314, we are going to have our answer. So that's 76. So the answer is 76. Again, if you like yourself some algebra, over here you would have probably got rid of this 5 by multiplying 5 to the other side. you would have added those four numbers up and subtracted them over. That's exactly what we did here, right? 78 times 5. Added them up, subtracted them. So the answer is 76. On number 28, it says 75% of 340. We will just take 0.75 times 340 to get that answer. And that's 255. Okay. Number 31 says, what is 40% less than 120? Okay, 40% less than 120. So we're going to take 40% of 120. Whoops, I accidentally put a 5 there. 40% of 120. And then we're going to subtract. So 40% times 120 is 48. And then 120 minus 48 is going to give us our answer. 72. As mentioned earlier when we did a similar problem, okay, it's also true that 40% less than 120, some people like to think that that's 60% of. And so I'll do this one without writing it down. Some people like to do that problem I just did, just like that. Notice you get the same answer with fewer steps. On number 33, it says change to a reduced fraction 60%. 60% means 60 out of 100. And so then we are going to reduce that to 3/5. And we divided both top and bottom by 10 here, and then divided both top and bottom by 2. There's multiple ways you could have got that done. You know, if you have a calculator, you should know that your calculator does this kind of thing for you, okay? And it doesn't have to be a calculator as fancy as this one. And so even the calculators, let's see if I have one in my desk. I don't. Even the calculators that are a little smaller have a fraction button. If you don't know how to use a fraction button and you struggle with fractions a little bit, you're going to want to ask in practical math how to use your calculator. It'll help you. Okay. Number 37 says change to a decimal rounded to the nearest hundred. That's 78/37. And so that's 78 divided by 37. So we're going to take 78 divided by 37, and that gives us 2.108. Okay. But we're only supposed to round to the nearest hundredth, and so I'm pointing here. That's in the hundredths place. The number after it is bigger than 5 or bigger, and so we will round. And so to the nearest hundredth would be 2.11. Number 39 and 40 are similar questions. You can see one of them says 2/3 of the way from 126 to 249. One of them says 1/4 of the way from 36 to 132. Okay, so let's do actually number 40 first. It might be a little easier. Let's draw a number line. Here's 36. Here's 132. It seems reasonable to ask ourselves, how far is it from 36 to 132? And so we'll subtract. Okay. That gives us 96. So we need 1/4 of 96. Since this is 1, okay, a unit fraction, 1/4, you could just take 96 divided by 4 here and get an answer. You could also take, 1 times 96 divided by 4. That works. All right. Anyway, 24 is the distance that we're interested in from 36 to 132. And so our answer comes when we add 24 to 36. So 36 plus 24 is 60. So our answer is 60. All right, let's move to this one up here. This is 126. And this is 249. So again, we're going to subtract to get that distance. So the distance between 126 and 249 is 123. We want 2/3 of that. Okay. We can do that by taking 2 times 123 divided by 3. And when that happens, you're going to get 82. Now, it's also true that some people like to just take 123 divided by 3, and that'd be 1/3 of the way. And so it'd be 41. And so they think like this. This is 41, and then another 41. And so the answer is 126 plus 41 plus 41, which also could have been found 126 plus 82. And so your answer here is 208. Either way, you would have got 208. Okay? All right. Number 44 maybe is the last one we're doing here. Okay. It says 20% more than 150. Okay, so 20% of 150, okay, is 0.2 times 150. That's 30. Now that's 20% of 150. We want 20% more than 150. So we're going to take 150 plus 30. And so our answer there is 180. That's how most people would probably think of that. Let me just show you this on the calculator, a faster way. And if you like it, great. If not, you can ignore it. 20% more is the same as 120% of. And so if I would have taken 1.20 times 150, I would have been able to answer this question in one fell swoop. If you like that, great. If not, most people, like I said, sort of like to think like the way that I wrote down on paper. All right, I hope this video helps with your practical math, and we will see you next time in room 261. Thanks for your attention.